if the oil hits the beaches, that's actually probably the easiest to clean up. So it's a concern, obviously, for tourism. It's a concern for an entire Gulf region that economically depends on the tourist season and this period of time when people are out of school. But those beaches will recover, because those big globs of oil, when they hit the beaches, we can send a bunch of people out there and scoop them up, dispose of it properly, and those beaches will look pretty pristine a year or 2 years from now. The biggest concern we have actually are the marshes, the estuaries, the wetlands.
President Obama on his trip to the Gulf region today, visiting 3 states. He did sound more optimistic than that soundbite in other statements today, saying the region will bounce back and that he and the administration are doing everything they can. This before a speech to the nation from the Oval Office Tuesday night, and then he will meet with BP executives Wednesday. What about all of this? What is said? What's being done? Let's bring in our panel. Steve Hayes, senior writer for the Weekly Standard. Mara Liasson, national political correspondent of National Public Radio, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Steve, if you're living on the Gulf Coast and you listen about the globs of oil, that's fairly depressing 1 or 2 years away.
Yeah, it's not the time frame you want to be hearing from the President of the United States. And I talked to some people down in the region who've been working in the region, and they said that basically we'd be lucky if we're 1/3 of the way through this right now. So I think you're looking at something that is very long term, and it's precisely the reason that you have President Obama spending 2 days down in the Gulf right now to see those kinds of pictures that we're showing, that other networks are going to be showing. It's why he's giving the speech tomorrow night. This is the time where he is finally going to take control in a way that I think he tried to do earlier with his press conference, but which failed because he botched some questions. He is now saying, I am taking control. I am directing BP to do what I want BP to do, and this is going to be the White House-controlled recovery.
That said, he's meeting with BP on Wednesday, and he's speaking to the nation Tuesday night. I mean, why not tell them what to do first and then tell the nation what you did?
Because he's going to tell them what to do in public before he tells them what to do in private.
I mean, look, he's going to take a couple of steps. First of all, he's certainly stepped up his involvement in the region. He's been down there a lot more. He's going to set up this escrow account, which is going to be administered by an independent third party, but funded by BP to handle the claims process.
He said a deal is close on that, likely Wednesday.
And BP has gotten a lot of criticisms for having a complicated, not very efficient claims process. That's one thing. He's also going to have to lay out a plan for how this thing is going to be cleaned up after the well is truly capped and it's contained. And those are things that the federal government is responsible for, and he's going to be held responsible for.
Charles.
I think it's very smart for him, politically smart, to propose the escrow account, because it does put him finally in control, because that would be a place where BP would have to put the money into. Then he would have, as Mara said, the money would be independently distributed by supposedly the government or some independent agency.
Not to interrupt, but if BP said, you know what, we're not going to do that, there's some question about what the administration could legally do to compel them to do it.
I agree. I think it's somewhat extra legal instructing BP. After all, the liability limits under the law today is $75 million. The fund he wants is $20 billion. But that's why you have White House lawyers. They create loopholes in the law, or they find them, or they give Obama ammunition by saying when he meets with the president of BP, you know, our lawyers have looked at this, and there are 18 possible laws that you may have violated, and the penalties would amount to a lot more than a $20 billion escrow. How about we make a deal? So even though it looks, I mean, I'm not sure how legal it is. He doesn't have the authority to order BP, but I think he has the leverage to make the BP do it, and it's very politically smart, because whereas up until now he was theoretically in charge, or saying he was, that really puts him in charge of BP, at least as to restitution and compensation.
And don't forget, Congress is considering a law that would raise the cap. There's already a limitation on labor.
Retroactively, that's
That's a question, but believe me, he's not going to get any pushback from anybody in Congress to say, let's not make BP responsible.
If you do it retroactively, it's a bill of attainder. Yeah. It's absolutely illegal.
But I think you may have to do this as a practical matter. This may have to come from the president for precisely the reason because this may not be legal, so the president needs to do it to increase public pressure
Exactly.
on BP. But I don't think it's a good idea politically. I actually think it's a bad idea politically because basically what you've got the president doing is putting all of this pressure to solve the legal issues before the problem itself is solved. I mean, you've still got oil spewing. You've got
Well,
months
one of
of
the
the
problems is the
oil washing in the
economic problem.
marshes, and the president's out there having these fights among lawyers.
On that score, this is what he told the Politico over the weekend in an interview about the tone of defensiveness a little bit. I think it's fair to say if 6 months ago, before this spill had happened, I had gone up to Congress and I had said we need to crack down a lot harder on oil companies and we need to spend more money on technology to respond in case of a catastrophic spill. There are folks up there, meaning Capitol Hill, who will not be named, who would have said this is classic big government overregulation and wasteful spending. Charles, what about that, considering you have a Democratic president, a Democratic House, and a Democratic Senate?
Yeah, well, look, this is a cheap hit at Republicans, and it's kind of a hypothetical hit. Had I proposed X, Republicans would have opposed. Well, you didn't propose X. In fact, you proposed expanding drilling. So this is a kind of way to placate his left while pretending that his proposed expansion of drilling never happened. So I think it's a pretty weak argument. The fact is that we respond to crises because history shows us what's risky and what's not, and we now know that this stuff a mile down is risky and we need some kind of oversight. But I must say it's also a way in which he's covering up on the moratorium, because that is of the drilling in deep water in the Gulf. That is killing what's left of the Gulf Coast economies without any scientific evidence it's actually needed, and in fact harming us because the booms are going to be moving offshore into other countries.
Mark, quickly, what about the turn to energy legislation that he will make Tuesday night?
I think that the turn to energy legislation is a good thing for the president to do politically and also substantively. This is energy legislation that has passed the House. I don't think there's anybody in the United States Congress of either party who would say we shouldn't do something to end our dependence on foreign oil.
But you said on this panel that this bill was dead at one time.
This particular bill, I'm not talking about any particular bill. I'm talking about a comprehensive energy bill, not necessarily the one that is being considered now.
No, but
I
that's
think
the
it's
one we have.
Yes, that's true, and there are many changes that can be made in it. I don't think it was going anywhere. I think this crisis gives it an opportunity to have new life breathed into the effort, and I can't imagine why a compromise couldn't be reached, especially in the wake of this crisis.
Steve?
No, which moderate Democratic senators are going to be the ones who are eager to join forces with the president at this point? I think the political dynamics that were at play today are the ones that were at play before the oil spill, despite the fact that he can make an emotional argument tomorrow night.
Last word.
If the bill were truly about oil independence, it would make sense. But it's not. The cap and trade is a bait and switch. It's not about oil. Oil is a part of it. It also is a huge tax on coal, of which we are the Saudi Arabia of the world. And if you kill coal at home, you're going to increase our dependence in other countries. So he's going to want to make it a bill that's going to be about all kinds of energy. It's not going to be about oil. It's not going to help our environment because the Chinese are opening a plant once a week for the next 10 years. All this is going to do is shut down our plants, open the plants in China, and it's going to be a transfer of wealth out of America into China, which is something we really don't need.
We will begin a series of reports about what's in the bill that's up there now, starting tomorrow with Jim Engel. Go to our homepage at foxnews.com/special report. Tell us what you think the president's top priorities should be by voting in our online poll right there on the right-hand side of the screen. Next up, why congressional Democrats may not